All right, let's talk about the process of completing the square. This process can be used to rewrite a quadratic function in standard form in vertex form. All right, so remember that if you have, say, quantity x plus some number a squared, you will get x squared plus 2ax plus a squared. I'm pretty sure you have seen it, but if you're not convinced, you can always multiply out, and so say x plus a squared is the same thing as x plus a, right? Then you can just multiply out. So for example, x times x is going to give you x squared, and x times a gives you ax, and a times x gives you another ax, and a times a is going to give you a squared, right? Then combining, a squared, x squared is x squared, right? Since there are two of them right here, right? So I already took care of this. So it's going to be 2ax, and then you have a last term, a squared, right? So that's why we get x squared plus 2ax plus a squared, right? Then a couple of things we need to notice is that the relationship between this number right here, 2a, and a squared, right? So a squared is 1/2 of 2a squared. So if you want to go from coefficient of x to the constant term, all you have to do is divide by 2, then square it. So I'll write it as a hat. 2 means raise it to a second power, right? Another thing you need to notice is that the relationship between 2a and a right here, right? So you can see that the coefficient of x, in order to get that number, you just need to divide by 2, right? So remember those couple things, right? So let's look at the first example, right? We want to complete the square so that we can write it in vertex form, right? Here's the process, right? First thing is I'm gonna just copy the first two terms. So you have x squared, right, minus 6x, right? Then I'm gonna give a little bit of room here, and I'm gonna put the plus 5 right at the end, right? Then what we do is we need to have a third term so that we can complete the square, right? So remember that the third term here is divide by 2, then square, all right? So in this case, it's a -6, so divide that by 2, which is -3, then square that, so -3 squared would be +9. So what we do is we're going to put the +9 right here, right? But since this will change the function, so I'm going to subtract 9 right away so that we don't change the function, all right? Then we can group the first three terms together. So I'm going to just put the parentheses around. So I'm going to keep these three terms together. So x squared minus 6x plus 9, right? Those guys are together, all right? Then you have -9 plus 5, so you have -9 plus 5. We're gonna put them together later. All right, so these three terms can be written as, since we have all three terms, so all we have to do is this is going to be a quantity, right? X, right? Remember that this number is 1/2 of the coefficient of x. In this case, coefficient of x is -6, 1/2 of that is -3, then squared, right? Then you can combine -9 and +5, so that's going to be -4, right? So you can see that the function, the same quadratic function, is written now in vertex form, right? So this is how we use completing the square to rewrite the quadratic function in vertex form. All right, so just for practice, so let's look at another example. All right, g of x is -2x squared plus 8x plus 3. All right, only difference is that the coefficient of x squared is a -2 instead of just 1. So in order to deal with that, what you do is factor out -2 just from the first two terms. So if you factor -2 from -2x squared, you're going to get x squared, right? If you factor out -2 from 8x, so basically divide by -2, so it's going to be -4x, right? Then I give a little bit of room here. Then I'll just put the third term right at the end, right? All right, then do the same process. We have x squared minus 4x. Then think about what would be the third term we need to complete the square. All right, just like before. All right, so -4 is the coefficient of x. So we have to divide by 2 and the square. So divide the -4 by 2, -2, square that. So we need the +4 here, right? But again, we can't just add 4 there, so we have to subtract 4 so we don't change the function, right? Then we clean up a bit. So I'm gonna just, you have a -2 is still there, right? I'm gonna keep these three terms together. So you have x squared minus 4x plus 4, right? Then there's an extra -4 here, so I'm going to bring it out by distributing -2 to -4. So -2 times -4 is +8, right? Then you still have +3 at the end, right? Now we can complete the square, so you have -2 is still in front, right? Then there's going to be a quantity x, right? This is going to be a half of that number, so it's going to be -2, then squared, right? So that'll take care of all three terms, and at the end you have 8 plus 3, so that'll be +11, right? So this is the function g of x in vertex form. All right, that's it. So this is how you apply completing the square to rewrite the quadratic functions in vertex form. All right, I hope that this was clear.